Welcome to stimulus control. What is stimulus control? Well, it's any kind of behavioral response from a stimulus to an organism. Basically, there are two main types of stimuli that we are keen to. There is the primary and unconditional one, which is the unlearned ones. These are ones that we are usually born with, such as loud sounds making us flinch, blinking when air is in our eyes. And then there's learned ones, which are cues, signals, or stimuluses. These are ones that, as the thing says, are learned. We usually associate them with unconditional primary ones, and slowly we develop these learned cues and signals to a behavior. Here are the 4 things we will be going over: establishing a cue, rules of stimulus control, signals, and signal magnitudes and fading. First, we will be going over establishing cues. Here are 2 main types of ways that we respond to cues, or cues are ingrained to us. There are conventional cues, and these are negative reinforcers. And in the beginning, we start with the cue first, and we teach the behavior with the cue. But there's another type, which is operant conditioning. And in this case, we shape the behavior first, and then after the behavior has taken place, we add the cue with it. And these are methods of introducing a cue. There are some where you produce the cue when the behavior is starting, and then repeat it again and again when it starts to happen more and more. You alternate with no cue and cue, and reinforce the cue on behaviors and extinguish the non-cued behaviors. And finally, you shape the response to a cue. And even if they're barely doing the behavior, you reward it. And then as it goes on, you change the criteria. And the criteria being how accurate they are doing the behavior to this fullest way that you want the behavior to be. And now we will go on to the rules of stimulus control. Here are the 4 rules of stimulus control that you should know. Number 1, the behavior always occurs when the stimulus is presented. Number 2, the behavior does not occur in the absence of a stimulus. Number 3, the behavior does not occur in the response of another stimulus. And number 4, no other behavior occurs in response to that stimulus. And when you have all 4 of these down for a stimulus, that means you have complete control over this behavior. But remember, you need to correct errors when cues are misinterpreted. Number 3, what kind of signals are we looking for? Okay, anything can be a signal. Things to remember. It has to be a stimulus that your organism responds to. So if your organism is deaf, sound is not going to be a good stimulus because it's not going to respond to it very well. In a working situation, it is best to stick to one cue. And a working situation being like, if you're a dog trainer, you don't want to keep changing the cue for every single dog, being like a clicker for sit for one dog and a snap of a finger for another. It is best to stick to one cue. And establishing a second cue is usually transferring the stimulus control and start using a second cue along with the first one. And when you're using it along with the first one, you might want to lessen the first, cue that you are using. And number 4, this is the last one, signal magnitude and fading. There are 3 main points of this. Magnitude can be at any magnitude, the stimulus will work as long as the organism reacts to it. And fading is when you start with a big stimulus and then decrease it slowly. So for an example, you go from telling a dog no and a snap of a finger. And as it goes on, you only need to snap your finger and your dog will stop doing whatever behavior you want to decrease. And there's transferring, which is just changing one stimulus to another. So like I said, saying no can be like a stimulus, and then slowly you integrate the snap, and then slowly you transfer it down to where you can just snap and the behavior occurs. And that's pretty much it for this section. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.